Hi, I'm John-Paul, and a really warm welcome back to my channel. Today, absolutely delighted to be continuing in conversations around training to be a therapist. Delighted to have on Dr. Henry Aughterson, who currently a doctor and also training, I think at Revision in London, to become a therapist. Henry, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
So, currently doctor and training at Revision, which I think is a transpersonal college, is integrative as well. How did that come about? How has this come about?
Yeah, it's a good question, and yeah, not a simple answer, I guess. It's been yeah, probably a journey of around 12 years from a professional point of view. So started medical school around 2014 or something. So maybe 12 years ago. Was always interested in helping people.
Mhm.
I was pretty good at science. I liked working with people, and medicine seemed like a vocation that fulfilled those sort of characteristics. And I think I had a certain idea of what being a doctor was, and maybe that was slightly different to the reality of medicine. Also, throughout medical school, had my own experience of mental health problems. Had a sort of breakdown or breakthrough, I suppose, in the first year after, yeah, I guess just a lot of changes, leaving home. Probably partying a bit too hard in that first year. Generally being quite a socially anxious and sensitive person, I think, but had never really kind of validated that side of myself. And so I had my first experience seeing a GP for mental health when I was around 19, who was amazing. Um, that led to me having some medication and also starting some CBT therapy at the time, some group CBT therapy, and also just started my fascination with mental health, this new thing called mental health that I discovered. Um, and actually, mental health is incredibly tied, as we know, to physical health, almost intrinsically, both in terms of kind of biochemically and with the stress hormone cortisol, our immune system, but also in terms of our behaviors, and underlying the majority of chronic physical health conditions, which is the majority of the strain on the NHS. I think is mental health in some way because it's our health behaviors. Um,
Yeah.
Someone is not continuing to smoke 40 a day when they've got lung cancer, um, and they know the damage it's causing them if they're not doing completely well from a mental point of view. And so I've always been really fascinated in this overlap between the mental and the physical. And I think once I saw it quite early on at medical school, I couldn't unsee it, and I was seeing it everywhere. And I felt that in hospitals, in particular, we were not particularly well equipped to support people with these mental health underpinnings of physical health, including their social circumstances, their anxiety, the depression. So I kind of felt often we were treating a physical symptom for what was fundamentally a social or psychological one. So I was like, how do we support with these psychological and social things? And of course, you've got psychiatry that deals with some mental health, often quite severe um, mental illness, and also still has quite a medicalized way of supporting people. And you have GP land, where GPs have 10 minutes. They have 10 minutes to cover all the physical health problems that someone comes to them with, ask all the questions they need to ask from a professional point of view, a medical legal point of view, and they also need to get to the root of this person's pain and suffering. How on earth can a GP do that in 10 minutes? And um, I sort of thought, oh, I feel that, the current uh, medical ecosystem is not particularly well equipped to support people with the support that they really need for their mental health and well-being, both in and of itself and in terms of what was underpinning someone's chronic physical health problems.
Mhm.
So after a few years of medical school, I took a few years out. I got some funding for myself to do a PhD studying something called social prescribing. which is basically the use of community groups and activities to support people's mental health. So I decided to sort of leave the NHS and uh, medical ecosystem and go and spend some time in communities and research them, as well as kind of participating in a range of community activities to support people. Did some other studies as well, and then came back to med school. So had a few years out, came back, finished off medical school, and then went into being a junior doctor. Um, but fairly soon kind of could see that my interest was, I guess, a little bit misaligned with the type of helping work you do as a doctor. It's not to say that certain doctors don't help like incredibly with people's mental health and approach things in a very holistic way. But I felt kind of fundamentally the whole system um, was not as aligned in how I wanted to support people, which was fundamentally through connection and meaning, and deep conversations, which take time. And so for a long time, to circle back to your original question, therapy has just been on my mind of, oh God, I actually, think I probably want to do that. And so what I'm figuring out now is I am doing therapy training, and just figuring out what kind of combination of medicine, research, and therapy I do.
So you're still working as a doctor now?
Yeah, so not full time, but I pick up shifts in A&E, so do what's called locum shifts. But I'm not currently on a medical training pathway where I'll eventually specialize. That wasn't for me.
Okay. Be lovely to hear about, how you're finding the training, particularly the kind of doctor, I suppose, diagnose, prescribe, and then at college, like revision, which we will come to that, I think. Um, but going back to your training, mental health, can I just ask doctors, how much is mental health covered in your training?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is still quite a medical model. I think broadly, even the scientific community have moved away from the sort of chemical imbalance theory of depression that dominated the 70s and 80s and um, led to the explosion of SSRIs and things like that. I think it's still a very medical way of talking about mental health within medical school and medical training. It's about diagnoses and the symptoms that um, you need to learn about in particular diagnoses and the treatment pathways. Of course, the treatment pathways include therapy and
Mhm.
include that even probably include social prescribing now. They might include CBT, mindfulness, as well as medication. So it's not that we're learning anymore that medication is the only way. I think the vast majority of doctors are very aware that combination of things can be helpful. But in terms of comparing that to the training I'm doing now, I mean they're worlds apart. And I think that in-depth understanding of mental health outside um, the medical model of mental health, we don't really spend much time learning about, and there's certainly not any kind of experiential type work that you do at medical school.
Okay. I mean, I think, if you're looking at the kind of perhaps more cognitive and scientific side of things that comes through medicine, and then to go into therapy training, which perhaps can also be about, meaning. Obviously, there's a spiritual aspects as well, transpersonal colleges. I mean, would hope perhaps that they are complementary to each other. I do wonder what your experience has been as to whether they can also not conflict with each other, just from personal experience, not a doctor, obviously, but I was a lawyer going
Mm.
into a transpersonal college. And I suppose I did go in with, as a lawyer, there's right and wrong answers to things. There are ways to do things or not. Things are clear. People need clarity. You don't often sit with the not knowing as a lawyer. It's your job to kind of know the answer, all those things. And I think that was one of the reasons, some ways, that I chose the college that I did, because it complemented that and added something. But there was also something in the training that I found, which people would be described perhaps as too heady. But how have you found that? I mean, do you find, having gone in with your medical training, that is a helpful thing?
Yeah, it's a big question, that one. I think I don't view them in competition with one another, but there's a tension there, and I also think there's a beautiful harmony there as well. And actually, one of the things I like about revision is that um, it's integrative. It incorporates these different perspectives, and one of them is a neurobiological kind of perspective because of all that we know now about attachment theory and those early childhood relationships and how sensitive the developing brain is. Um, that heady stuff is necessarily there, I think, within therapy training, or at least a therapy training that I um, would really value. But I also think 100% there's work, and has been work for me moving away from a very, very heady way
Mm,
of learning
mm,
and understanding things to a much more soulful or heart-centered one. I mean, I'm sure similar for you with your transition, this has been a journey for me that's long preceded, this
mm.
decision to, embark upon a therapy training course and leave medical training. So I think I've been quite open to that side of things for a while. Um, that being said, it's still, absolutely something that I continue to need to work on and enjoy working on as well. Noticing when I'm being, that ego defense of over intellectualizing. That's a classic me, and that for sure is related to my time at medical school and also preceded that with my schooling and
Mm.
upbringing. Revision have a great question they often ask, which is, what if it isn't wrong? And it's
Okay.
so powerful for me sometimes. I think this sense of right or wrong that we often internalize from such a young age, and the shame that comes with that. And
Yeah.
sometimes just pausing to ask yourself that question can really sort of stop you in your
Totally.
tracks, can't it?
Yeah, yeah, not that I suppose a binary way of looking at things necessarily. Equally, I also think it could be quite helpful in terms of a frame, isn't it, to have quite a grounded intellectual frame about things. I think clients will also, at times, that could be the thing that may not be as around for them as it could be. Some people are very much in feeling and actually an intellectual frame and a more cognitive way of framing things can be very helpful, can't it? But yeah.
Yeah, and I hope the combination that I come at it from will be helpful in that way, and sort of
Mm,
seeing it as a bit of a dance between the two. I'm not viewing medicine as this evil thing, this way of thinking about things that is too intellectual, and because that's so simplistic. And medicine obviously is a wonderful thing in many, many ways. And I think also having, the skepticism that's uh, rooted in a lot of medicine, a lot of academic studies, a lot of the way that we learn is basically to constantly, question things, question studies. You're constantly asking these questions in medicine as a doctor. And I think those are skills that are incredibly helpful as a therapist, even if you're doing it a slightly different way. As I think that therapy is a fairly unregulated field, for better or worse. I think there are benefits of that in terms of having a big range of possible modalities and sort of people you can choose from as a client. But there are also dangers in that as well. And I think, uh,
mm.
yeah, coming from a medical background where evidence is incredibly important, I think that's something that will stay with me forever and is I think a good thing.
You've been talking about it, but your experience of training so far, are you in your first year? Is that right?
Yeah. So about half a year through or something.
Half a year through. So, how are you finding it? What things are you enjoying? Anything that's challenging?
How am I finding it? I've loved it. Is the short answer, but it's very deep. It's a very introspective process. The first year is um inside out learning, as they say. So it's we're not seeing any clients. It's very much a year-long process with the group, where you're looking at your whole life from birth to very early childhood relationships to sibling relationships, gender, sexuality, adolescence, and leaving home. Um, so the first kind of couple of months, you're just focused on those first few years, and of course, um, you don't remember all of that perfectly consciously. There's this great line by, is it Peter Fonagy or Fonagy? I'm not sure how you say his name. Um, I think he was a neuroscientist, and he said that period is unrememberable and unforgettable.
Mm.
And it just really pierced me, that line, because I was like, yeah, that says it,
Yes.
embed
It,
in you. And we have such a social brain at that point, we're entirely dependent on our caregivers. I'm noticing now I'm getting really heady and over intellectualizing when you've asked me how I found the half year. Um, but it's been amazing. It's very, very unique. It's a very beautiful process. You're exploring all these things with a group who you've obviously just met
Mm.
5 or 6 months ago, but you obviously not obviously, but I have become close with people in the group, and you form these lovely connections and these deep connections, and it's a very unique uh experience, really. And yeah, the whole year is you exploring your journey with the help of others, and through a range of different means. So visualization exercises, sort of psychodrama, um, meditation, movement, writing. They lots of different very creative means. So yeah, it's been amazing, deep, difficult, challenging, worthwhile, meaningful.
Mm. Mm. Did it surprise you what it would involve?
Yeah, it did. It did surprise me more, more than more than I imagined. I think it's a level of kind of depth that they're going and that we have gone that I haven't gone to before. And also the very creative group ways that we're learning to kind of navigate introspection and
Mm.
um thinking about our kind of early childhood influences is really, really unique. And yeah, I guess I thought, I don't know, maybe there was a little bit of, I don't know if arrogance is the right word, but kind of thinking, oh yeah, I've done, 10 years of growth on myself, and this is my territory, type thing, that maybe I wasn't, I didn't necessarily foresee it being as challenging as it has been at points. But the challenging points have been some of the most important, I think, for my learning and growth, and hopefully, contribute to being the best therapist that I can be.
Mm. So it's interesting that first year, or at least this part up until now, is very much just about your internal process, and of course you're with other people, so it's going to be about what's happening with others as well and group. So there hasn't been sort of lectures or formal lectures on psychodynamic or anything like that. It's they do it in that way.
Yeah, so they often stuff will get dropped um, in terms of kind of psychodynamic and other kind of modalities and other theories, but that's more from next year onwards. Um, but often we talk about and discuss how what we are doing will um, kind of support our training as as working with clients. I mean, for example, the interpersonal groups which we do, which involve discussing sort of social issues and dynamics within the group with one another in an open and authentic and honest way. Often that's used or facilitated in a way that shows us how important that is for our roles as future therapists, because in order not, you can't people please the whole time. For example, as a therapist, you need to say difficult things. You need to risk saying things that are gonna affect the way someone might think about you, um, for the benefits of the client. So um, still incredibly relevant, but yeah, as you say,
Mm.
not working with specific techniques yet with clients or anything. It's very,
Yeah.
very inside out. And I think I can see the benefits of that. I think it's really important. Equally, having come from full time helping people as a doctor and being kind of service to having a year that is not that, has also had challenges for me as well, but is the good challenges, as I say.
Good, good. So the kind of things, needing to be honest about what's happening for you and within the group, and what's all that been like for you? How have you found it? Would that be natural for you, or something that you would find a bit more difficult?
I think being vulnerable is something that I feel okay with and I enjoy. I don't mind crying in front of people. I yeah, I don't mind being as vulnerable as I can be. I think sometimes I've had difficulty connecting with um, emotions underlying. So maybe I can, if there's a tendency in me, it might be towards an intellectual vulnerability and maybe less of a felt embodied emotional one.
Mhm.
Um, that's a pattern I've noticed. I think in terms of saying things that might I worry might upset people. Yeah, that's something that I definitely have found difficult, and is a challenging thing in those dynamics. But I think fundamentally you kind of learn that it's a safe space, as safe as a space can be, and it's a very compassionate group, and we're sort of learning, that difference between kindness and niceness. And for
Sure.
myself as well, being on the receiving end of feedback that has hurt, but I've kind of immediately felt um, that it was true and there were benefits in it and that I would learn from it and almost immediately felt gratitude for that. So that's the kind of um, the profound benefits of those types of groups is that you are trying to model relating to people in an extremely authentic way,
Mm.
to a degree that is uncommon, I think, in society and our relationships with family, friends, etc.
Mm. Do you think is your plan, would you say, to start a practice and no longer be a doctor, or you just don't know at the moment?
Yeah, I'm sitting with the don't know at the moment, actually, which is it's definitely something I struggle with. But I think
Yeah.
that's the honest answer. I think um, I can see myself carrying on doing little bits of doctoring, so shifts in A&E and things like that, but maybe not specializing. But certainly, yeah, wanting to set up a therapy practice at some point. I'm also doing some coaching, sort of health coaching training this summer as well, which is sort of a doctor's qualification. Health coaching is something that I'm really, and just coaching in general is something I'm really interested in. And I think that overlap of coaching and therapy is really, really important. So yeah, I think I'm still very passionate about health, very passionate about people's behaviors and health behaviors. What I'm less passionate about is the kind of medical model and biomedical way of supporting with these things, which I feel you tend to be fairly restricted as a doctor in terms of what uh, the role that you play in the current systems. But I can see myself having some kind of hybrid practice, as a therapist, but maybe still supporting people, for example, with chronic health conditions, for example.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Mm. How long's the course? If you is it 4 years, 5 years?
3 years, but can be extended to 5 years. So 3 years, you'd be technically a psychotherapeutic counselor, and 5 years you would technically be a psychotherapist. But obviously, I know they're not protected titles technically, but
Okay. And an interesting thing, social media. I mean, up until this point, we met in inverted commas to the extent that that is a meeting on Instagram. And so you have started and are doing very well on Instagram with a channel. How did that come about? What's that like for you?
yeah. So that came about a couple years ago. Working in hospital medicine full time and missing this side of myself that has always been so important. I've always wanted to work in mental health, to support people with mental health and well-being, and I felt I wasn't getting enough of whatever that was for me in full-time hospital medicine. So I decided to, yeah, hop on Instagram. I wasn't actually using Instagram at the time, and have, yeah, certain reservations and issues with kind of in general, I think. But felt it would be a good platform to uh, reach people. It's where a lot of people are,
Mm.
and felt I could, yeah, come on it in an authentic way. And started off producing some, evidence-based wellness and tips videos, and now it's sort of merged into some interviews with people, and it's kind of
Mm.
a range of stuff. But yeah, I've actually found it to be a really connecting thing to do, both with people from a professional point of view and a personal point of view. I never, um, yeah, I guess I didn't know that it would have that side as much as it has done. And so it's kind of shown me that you can be on social media as you are,
Mm,
in an authentic way to connect with people. It's kind of how you use it. But I think it can be hard on a platform like Instagram as well when you're the algorithm is such that it's encouraging short form content, flicking to the
yeah.
next video.
Mm,
Um, it can be difficult, and also you're constant being on a platform like that. You're constantly fighting all the addictive messaging that you're getting from the screen as well. And
mm.
that was part of the reason I wasn't on Instagram before. But yeah, I do think there are boundaries you can put in place to support yourself with that. And yeah, I've enjoyed doing it.
Hmm. I guess having stayed on it for a couple of years, there must be significant benefits as you described that are coming from it for you. Are things developing on it over time, would you say, as far as the type of content you produce and
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I'm sure you found this as well. Like talking in front of a camera is it's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's a skill, and actually you get better at it.
hmm.
Even though people might think, oh, you're just talking, there's something about putting a camera there um, that changes things. And I think I've got better at that. Um, Trying to be myself as much as possible. Um, in terms of evolution, I suppose just doing more interviews with people, which has been nice, both on the receiving end and doing the interviewing. Um, yeah, I mean, other than that, I suppose it hasn't really changed much. You sort of sometimes you do an extra, a video if something's done well, you might talk about that issue again because it's resonated with people. Um, but yeah, probably need some sort of better action plan as to where it's going to go. But yeah, no, at the
Well,
moment,
I think in some ways, yeah, going with the way it develops, whether that's audience response or what you feel like you want to do, I think that's the most helpful way to do it. But as you say, sometimes the algorithm is pulling people in different directions, isn't it? And I think it's quite a difficult thing to navigate that. In that, if you're certainly on YouTube, it's very clear about what it is that you need to do, is find that sort of niche. And I know someone who I talked to on the channel, actually, he's a therapist, and during COVID, I think it was, maybe even a bit before, he started to talk about narcissism. And really, when everybody was living at home, I don't mean this as smiling, but with people and they're Googling, is my partner narcissistic? And his YouTube channel took off enormously. What it has meant since is he needs to repeatedly produce content which is about that thing. You have to start to
yeah,
please. You say audience algorithm, but it is probably an audience as well. And I think that can be a difficult thing, can't it? I also sometimes see therapists, we were talking about it a little bit before, maybe putting some things on social media, which I think are probably about the algorithm and about this will bring a response from people. It's within a few seconds. If I say something which is, they probably feel strongly about what it is that they're saying, but that's much more likely to get people to stop and which is what the platforms want, interact, isn't it? They want comments, they want clicks. And I do, it's managing that process as well, isn't it? Because is that, although it's good for clicks, good for views, is it who you want to be? Is it all those things as things that need to be navigated when you're on it?
100%. And I think a lot more so on Instagram than YouTube. But as you say, YouTube is also pushing the shorter form stuff at the moment
Mm.
now as well. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to navigate. We're all wired to want to be liked, to want attention, for want people to say you've done a good job. So it's completely natural as well that occurs. But also I think you constantly have to recognize it and um, ask yourself, am I showing up authentically? And I think it is also possible to do that. And I do think actually those platforms do also reward being yourself and authentic connection too,
Mm.
alongside the more kind of clickbaity stuff, hooking people in, controversial takes, etc., etc.
It's interesting what you say about likes and being pulled into likes. I mean, actually, on YouTube, I don't know if it's the same for Instagram, but it's not necessarily it's engagement. So even if you get half likes and half, I don't think there is an unlike or dislike. There is on YouTube, although they took the button off as far as showing it, but you can still dislike a video. And you think, oh
Right.
gosh, that's a shame that somebody's disliked that video. But from YouTube's point of view, that it's just engagement.
That's
So that,
engagement.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you can see how it will get somebody into a situation of being controversial, because yeah, lots of people would dislike it, and that works just as well as something that people like. I don't know how true all of that is, but it's just an interesting thing. You're on there and you're doing very, very well at it, aren't you? It would seem to me that what you produce is very authentic and what you want to do. I mean, what have people said to you on the course that have seen your content?
I'm not even sure if anyone has seen my content. That's a discussion. Yeah, discussion down the line. I think I haven't really hasn't been something I've kind of talked about. I mean, I don't really talk about. Um, yeah, haven't really been talking about the kind of course specifically in any kind of personal way on Instagram. But yeah, at some point, either I'll mention it possibly, or someone will see something, and then I'll cross that bridge.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Just generally, I always ask people, finishing like a couple of things as you're training. Anybody who's thinking about training, is there any or starting training? I know you're in relatively early stages of it yourself, but any advice that you would give to someone?
yeah, I think spend some time thinking about what type of training you want, what type of therapist do you want to be. Um, so spend some time thinking about the different modalities, having a look at more psychodynamic or psychoanalytical, and also looking at, yeah, transpersonal, integrative, humanistic. Do your research on that, see which speak to you and resonate with you. Create a short list of, all the available courses that you can do in your particular area. Try and talk to some people who've trained at that organization. Yeah, I think make sure it's definitely what you want to do, like to the best of your ability. Try and have an idea of, the day to day of what being a therapist is actually like. So maybe talk to some therapists about that. Can even talk to your own therapist about it if you have a therapist.
This wasn't the second question actually, but just out of interest, your choice of course, going to revision. Did you research lots of different ones? Was there a particular reason, well, there would have been, why you chose there?
Yeah, it didn't come up for me on standard Google searches for some reason. Actually, my therapist recommended it. She thought it was one that I might connect with. And as soon as I got on the website and saw the videos from people, I thought, oh wow, this is a bit of me. I really connected with what people were saying about the course and what the training had been like and becoming a therapist, and just, yeah, really felt kind of, yeah, I felt a connection, I guess, to the course, and then researched it a bit more. Did a 4 day kind of intro course with them that you have to do as a prerequisite to applying. Really enjoyed that. Revision is transpersonal, so it's psychotherapy with soul. And I think soul means different things to different people. For me, soul is around connection, community, a sort of feeling that we're connected to something, greater. For me, that's not necessarily a god, but it's just that kind of felt feeling. Often feel a connection to soul with poetry, music, festivals, creative activities.
Mhm.
That was something that, mattered to me. I think, especially coming from medicine and medical training, where there's probably slightly devoid of soul. But knowing that I have that within me, I think I was looking for a training that was both rigorous academically, but also, yeah, had that more soulful and creative side as well. And yeah, revision hit those boxes for me basically, as yeah, as much as more than any I could find. So yeah, really really happy to get placed there.
Mm. It is. This is another question, which isn't the second one as well. But when it just reminded me of something you were saying before about is it social prescription, or that when you're saying that the number of other things that are very therapeutic take.
100%. I mean, social prescribing is a medical term to effectively mean um, a shared group activity, to support your well-being. I mean, there are so many um, things for this, whether that's, you know, engagement with nature, gardening, playing sport together, group exercise, group singing, choirs, um, so many things, growing evidence-based for these things that supporting people's, mental health. It was called social prescribing in the medical world as a means to get funding to support referrals from GPs to community groups, and just kind of increase the general awareness among medical professions of how incredibly valuable these types of groups can be. And I think, as you say, they're not therapy, but they are therapeutic.
Mm.
And all of its importance. I think if you were just getting therapy to support yourself, but you didn't have social connection outside of that or engagement with community in some way, then you're still going to have challenges. So for me, yeah, I am deeply passionate about them both. I'm deeply passionate about therapy, but also incredibly passionate about community and social prescribing and encouraging people to, yeah, engage in shared shared group activities and group experiences, because I think that's, yeah, it's fundamentally what I think being a full human is about.
Completely agree with you. Fantastic. Thank you. And the proper second question and last question. Um, a piece of life advice. What's your favorite piece of life advice that you live by?
I've received or I would give.
Let's say what you would give.
What I would give. Okay. Trying to move away from my advice brain during therapy training, which is so I'm now going back into it. Interesting. Okay. That's so broad. I love it. Hmm. Okay. I would say make prioritizing your mental health and well-being the number one priority in your life. And I say that because I think for those of us that have resistance towards that, I think there's um, some kind of thinking that by doing so is selfish in some way. But I think it's absolutely the truth that if you do put your mental health and well-being first, you can be um, the best version of yourself for other people. You can be the best friend, you can be the best partner, you can be the best family member. Um,
Mhm.
you can be, ironically, the least selfish person possible.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, yeah, I think there is a point in some people's lives where they decide, bang, I really, really need to prioritize my mental health and well-being now. And I think if you do, yeah, if you're thinking about embarking upon that through whatever means, maybe that's talking to your friends a bit more, trying to find a therapist, or just, yeah, making changes in your life that put your mental health first. I think it's going to have, yeah, enormous effects on the rest of your life.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much for all your answers and your honesty and sharing your experience. That's been brilliant. I think it'll be very helpful for people. Really appreciate it. And good luck with everything that you do. I will put links to anything you want me to put a link to below the video, including, of course, your Instagram channel. Everybody go and follow Henry on Instagram. As I say, it's been great. Maybe at some point, when you're through the training or part of the way through, you can come back and talk about how things are going. But thanks again.
Thanks, John-Paul. It's been, yeah, amazing to chat.
Okay.